In the beginning, it felt clear. Not confusing, not uncertain. Clear. He chose you, not in a loud, dramatic way, but in the small things that are impossible to fake. The way he showed up. The way he stayed present in conversations. The way his attention didn't feel scattered, but directed at you. There was a consistency to him, a grounded energy. You didn't feel like you had to chase. You didn't feel like you had to prove anything, because he was already there, choosing you, without making it a question. And that's what made it different. You felt attraction before, you felt chemistry before, but this felt like intention. He opened up gradually, not all at once, but enough for you to see something real underneath.
He talked about things that mattered to him, shared parts of himself that most people don't show early on.
There was depth, and you met him there, not by pushing, not by forcing anything forward, but by simply being present in the same space he was creating. And for a while, it worked, effortlessly, like both of you were moving at the same pace without needing to talk about it. But then, something changed, not in a way you could clearly point to. There was no argument, no obvious shift, no moment where everything suddenly fell apart. It was quieter than that. He still responded, still showed interest, still acted like he cared. But something underneath it felt different. The energy wasn't as open. The warmth wasn't as steady. The presence you used to feel so clearly started to feel inconsistent. And that's where the confusion begins. Because nothing is technically wrong, but something feels off. You start to notice the gaps, the slight delays in replies, the conversations that don't go as deep anymore, the subtle feeling that he's holding something back. And the hardest part? He's still there. He hasn't disappeared. He hasn't ended things. He hasn't given you a reason to walk away. But he's not showing up the same way either. So you sit in this space, between what it was and what it is now, trying to understand something that doesn't have a clear explanation. You go back in your mind, replaying moments, looking for something you missed, something you did, something you could fix. Because it would almost be easier if there was a reason. But there isn't. At least not one that's obvious. And that's what makes it so unsettling. Because it forces you to face something uncomfortable. Sometimes people don't pull away because of something you did. They pull away because of something they started to feel. Attraction is easy to handle. Even connection, in the early stages, is manageable. But when something starts to deepen, it changes the internal experience completely. What once felt exciting starts to feel significant. And significance brings something with it that not everyone is ready for. Responsibility, expectation, vulnerability, not from you, but from within themselves. Because when someone chooses you and feels something real, it's no longer just about enjoying the moment. It becomes about what this could turn into, what it might require, what it might expose. And for someone who isn't fully comfortable with emotional closeness, that shift can feel overwhelming. Not because the connection is wrong, but because it's right enough to matter. That's when the nervous system reacts. Not logically, but instinctively.
Slow down. Create space. Don't get too deep.
And that reaction doesn't always show up as a clear decision. It shows up as subtle distance, a slight pulling back, a change in energy that's hard to explain but easy to feel. From your side, it feels like something is slipping. From his side, it feels like trying to regain control. Control over his emotions, control over the pace, control over something that started to feel bigger than expected. And that's where the disconnect happens. Because you're experiencing the connection as something that's growing, while he's experiencing it as something that needs to be managed. You lean in naturally. He leans back instinctively. And neither of you are doing anything wrong, but you're no longer moving in the same direction at the same speed. That's why it feels confusing. Because the connection didn't disappear, it changed form. He didn't stop choosing you completely. He just stopped choosing the depth at the same level as before. And that's a much harder thing to understand. Because it's not rejection, but it doesn't feel like full presence either. It's something in between. And that in-between space is where most people lose themselves, trying to regain what was there, trying to bring things back to how it felt in the beginning. But the truth is, the beginning didn't have weight. Now it does. And weight reveals capacity, not just feelings, but the ability to handle those feelings. So when he chose you, he meant it. But when things deepened, it asked more from him than he was ready to give. Not in words, but in presence, in consistency, in emotional availability. And that's the part people don't talk about enough. That someone can feel something real and still not be able to stay fully in it. Not because you weren't enough, but because the connection required something they hadn't built within themselves yet. The ability to stay open when it stops feeling easy. And that's where the real difference is made. Not in how something starts, but in how someone shows up when it begins to matter.